Welcome back to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I am Devin.
And I'm Nick.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Nick, I have a easy question for you. It's actually literally easy.
You say this all the time.
I say it all the time, and I will continue to say it to always throw you in a trap.
This is the boy who cried wolf situation.
On purpose.
On purpose.
Nick, it is still summer. Still sunny. Maybe not today so much. But do you, while you're like running, while you're having fun, do you burn in the sun?
Do I burn in the sun? Yeah. I actually, what do you call it? There was one time, I used to think I didn't burn. And that was, I think, when I ate more Mexican food. But what do you call it? I went to Nice in college, and when I had come back, I was like out there, no sunscreen, because why would you?
Why?
Right. I actually had gotten so sunburned that like it started to like pocket with like water.
Oh,
because like
you got blisters,
right? Yeah. So that was fun. So I got to like scrub.
Oh, yeah.
Those off. So that happened. And then more recently, right before Lala, I had gotten really bad sunburn. I don't remember why, but it kind of like started to do that again. And I was like, okay, skin. Let's, find our melanin again.
Yeah. My problem is like if I, this might be a little gross, but just warning everybody. My problem is if I get such a bad burn and like I start to peel, and then it's just like I scratch my shoulder and it's like, oh god, there's just so much like skin coming off me. But there's always like that one piece that you just have to like kind of take off and then reenact Austin Powers Goldmember.
I was gonna say, what fucking movie is that?
Austin Powers Goldmember.
Do you try it?
Oh god, no! I don't actually eat it. I just go and then put it in a little box.
But blink twice if you actually eat it.
Blink.
Right, exactly. That's horrifying.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Sorry, not to like support you in your peeling endeavors. But I don't peel a lot, which is kind of nice. I just really get really like red. Which, and then like in a day or two, it's gone. So not too bad. But then I'm like, tan. And I'm like, can we just like keep this tone?
Yeah.
Like, Christ. Yeah.
Right. No, I always try to, in the beginning of the summer, it's like first day of sunshine. I'm like, please, let's just start this base out. Right. Get some color back on my body.
Get a cup of coffee, bird app.
Yeah.
Just laying in the sun. Ready to go.
Bird app's going while I'm also reading. Please,
sorry.
Thank you.
It's a balance. You're right. Incredible.
Great, thanks for answering this.
Well, my question is, are you an active sunscreen user now? Have you learned your lesson?
No, I only do it for my tattoos.
Only on your tattoos?
Yeah.
What? But at that point, why not just go the rest of it?
Well, when my body is covered in tattoos, that's when I will do the rest of it.
3 years later, just like head to toe. We circle back to this conversation.
Yeah. No, well, I don't know, because I like getting tan.
Are you a spray person or are you like a lotion person?
Spray?
Yeah.
It's whatever like someone else buys, Allie buys, I'll use.
And you're like, buy someone else, what I mean is, right. Yeah, sprays, I don't like the smell of a spray. And like a lotion's no better, but at least a lotion feels just like hand lotion. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a hit or miss situation.
I just don't have the time for lotion.
Excuse me?
Spray is then I'm in the pool.
You have to let it sit for a second.
Whoops.
Or else you just let it wash right off. This is why not only are you not spraying the entirety of your body, but then you're also just immediately washing it away. I don't think it's a sort of situation here. Have you ever gotten sunburned on your tattoos?
No.
Never. Not a once.
Okay. If I hadn't put on any sunscreen, of course, then.
Sure.
But otherwise, if sunscreen is involved, no sunburn on my tattoos.
Interesting. I just imagine just like a bear outline and the rest of your arm is just fully red. Yeah. Incredible.
That's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
It's just a weird like splot on my arm. All right. So the reason why I asked this question is we're not going to an LA tan or anything like that. I wanted to ask the titular question. Mm-hmm. What do you know about rednecks?
Oddly, only a little bit, because I read this book called Demon Copperhead, and they kind of like reference, like, because it takes place in West Virginia. So they like reference like redneck and how that kind of came to be, so to speak. But I don't really like remember. I just remember like it has to do with like labor workers in the country.
Yeah,
that's it.
Perfect.
And then there's like so much more attributed to that, but that's all I remember.
Hey, that's a great starting point.
Oh, thank you.
So we're going to get into all of it.
Yay!
So this is actually a topic that I've been wanting to do for about like a year. It's been in my notes app. But I think like now is kind of the appropriate time to talk about it.
Okay.
And like, I know in our bylaws when we started this podcast, we were like, if Joe Rogan shut it down.
Right.
And we're not going to get there. We are going to get a little political today, though.
Oh.
Just based off of the nature of this topic.
Sure.
So just a fair warning.
Hold on.
And
to
you know
girdles.
me. I am very close to my vest of my political views.
100%.
So
100%.
just warning everybody.
Just throwing it out there. I did see today on a car 2 magnets on the back of their vehicle, and one was a Wonder Woman symbol.
Okay.
And the other one was a Blue Lives Matter or Thin Blue Line thing.
Yeah.
And then that made me think, would Wonder Woman be a Blue Lives Matter person? Because in that person's head, same thing.
See, I don't think so. I think Wonder Woman. Well, here's the trick, though, because there's the whole Injustice storyline where like Superman and most of the Justice League kind of goes a little extreme, and kind of is like, I need to rule the world. Like peasants are the normal folk aren't doing a good job. I'm taking over the world.
Okay, a little of the boys.
He kills like Lex Luthor and all that stuff.
What?
Yeah, just read it.
Okay. I won't.
And like Wonder Woman is on the side of Superman, but I think it's just it's more along the lines of like there just needs to be justice, capital J, justice. But I don't think she would agree with like kneeling on someone until they die.
Interesting.
Kind of killing someone in their sleep kind of situation. I don't think she would agree with that. Justice.
Okay.
Huge air quotes on that one. I think she'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? That's not justice. That's murder.
She'd be like the common person that's like, I absolutely support police and firemen, but like it's not a political
I'm for
issue.
Law and order, not for killing innocents.
Correct.
I think that's where. So I don't agree with having them on the bumper. But it's also the same people that have. This is a huge tangent. Yeah. It's also the same people that have like the Punisher's symbol with the thin blue line in there. It's like no. Frank Castle is fucking anti-cop as shit. Like the biggest anti-cop guy out there. He's an anti-hero. He was fucked over by the government and like the FBI, which is part of the government. And so, like, that's where he's going on this whole revenge against government cops and all this stuff, and like tries to kill Spider-Man and all this other stuff. So it's like you're not sending the right message.
The selective storytelling and contradiction within
it's hilarious
conservative side of society is insane.
Yeah. It's just do your research. And that's kind of what this topic is about today.
Right. I can't wait.
Know your shit.
Right.
So rednecks.
Yes.
So today, when you call someone a redneck, you are most likely referring to them in the same way as when you call someone a cracker, hillbilly, and or white trash.
Yes.
It's a derogatory term to describe typically white Southern Americans that appear to be unsophisticated. That's kind of the general idea of what a redneck has come to be.
Yeah. I do wonder, and you might get into it, is there a difference between a hillbilly and a redneck?
I don't get into that. I believe it's kind of a regional thing, though. Like a hillbilly would be more from the hills.
Foothills? Yeah, okay.
But I'm not too sure.
Interesting.
The Cambridge Dictionary defines a redneck
as,
quote, a poor white person without education, especially one living in the countryside in the southern U.S., who is believed to have prejudiced ideas and beliefs. This word is usually considered offensive, end quote.
Okay. Sure.
Right, because like if for us Yankees up here, calling people a redneck, it's like, oh, it's just those like racist redneck assholes kind of situation.
Sure. That's fair.
Because y'all have tarnished the word redneck with your bullshit ideas and actions. So anyway,
here it comes, folks. The pot is a-boiling.
And my next topic in 2 weeks is also a little political, just so you all know. But it's more on like a friendlier side. It's fine.
We are going to check the scale of redness that your neck is by the end of this. Yeah.
I'm already a little warm.
Right.
Just a rip off my shirt throughout it. So with that definition, I want to get to the origin of the term redneck, because there are a few different origins, but are all related to, like you said, the working class Southerners, and it's very much so political.
Okay.
The most simple origin of this term is from the sunburn that was commonly found on the back of farmers' necks. This idea came from about the late 19th century. And then another story that depicts the origin of this term is from the West Virginia mine wars from the early 1900s. This is what was mentioned in your book that you read.
Okay.
Those participating wore a red bandana tied around their neck.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell the story of both.
Okay.
Starting with the farmers. So, you know, we kind of talked about it when you're working outside for long hours every single day, especially if you're lighter toned. It's really hard to avoid getting a sunburn.
Yeah.
So like hats could be worn to protect their heads and faces from the rays that would otherwise mark and burn their skin. But that kind of tends to leave the back of your neck exposed because you're looking down at your fields. Even if you have a wider brimmed hat, it's not going to really get that much of an angle.
Yeah.
Now some folks like if you're wearing like a baseball cap, like you would, depending on where the angle of the sun, you would turn it around. That's kind of maybe the origin of wearing your hat backwards is to protect your neck. But there's no really way to prove that.
Sure. I will say I did always find it interesting when you see like some construction workers or like migrant workers especially wearing like long sleeves. They'll wear the bandana like either in front or behind, like turned around, like to protect themselves from all of that sun.
Yeah.
I always was like, aren't you like hot as balls? Which they probably are.
They are.
Yeah.
They're sweating their ass off.
Right. But it's better to protect yourself
than get skin cancer. It's better to sweat than have cancer.
Right. If you had to weigh the two, right?
Be stinky or be full of cancer. Who knows?
Honestly, tough call.
But just like the rugged calluses left from working with your hands, if you're a laborer, a red burned neck was hard to hide. So this made it easier for someone to assume your class and situation based off your hands and your sunburn.
Got
it. So you weren't able to like disguise yourself as one of the elite or something like that. People would be like, oh, look at your hand, look at your neck. You're a worker.
Found out.
Right.
Got him.
And so this was obviously like pre-1900, just like 1890s, all of this kind of was going on.
Sure.
Where there was a lot more...
it's kind of like Victorian era, right?
Yeah,
so there's a lot more like attention to etiquette. There's a lot more attention to like roles and society.
A little bit more discrimination between the classes is what I was trying to say.
There it is. You found it.
So in 1893, there was even a bit of written explanation for the term redneck. as, quote, poorer inhabitants of the rural districts. Men who work in the field, as a matter of course, generally have their skin stained red and burnt by the sun, and especially is this true of the back of their necks, end quote. So at the turn of the century, so around 1900, political factions within the Democratic Party are forming. And on one side, we have the conservative, pro-business Bourbon Democrats, led by Grover Cleveland.
Here he is.
Yeah. Now, he had a fairly successful presidency from 1885 to 1889, enough to get him reelected for the 93-97 term. There was a gap. But Grover and his Bourbon Democrats were for a laissez-faire capitalism, or kind of a hands-off economy, to boil it down to its barest of bones.
Got it. I think Grover Cleveland is the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms.
I believe so as well.
Yeah.
I think that's his, fun fact.
That's kind of it. Who's the one that got stuck in the bathtub?
It was, after a quick Google, President William Howard Taft.
Taft. Like Taffy. Yeah, that's how I remembered it. It's not good. I apologize.
Clearly it didn't work.
To the Taft family, and clearly it did not work. Yikes.
So Taft got stuck in the tub. Grover Cleveland, 2 non-consecutive presidencies.
Nice.
Fun facts.
Love to see him.
So Grover and his Bourbon Democrats, like I said, laissez-faire capitalism. They loved the banks and railroads, hated imperialism and overseas expansion, loved the gold standard, and hated bimetallism. Bimetallism would be a type of economy that incorporates 2 metals as the standard for the economy. So instead of just gold, it'd be gold and silver.
Got it. We're still on the gold standard, are we not?
Yeah.
Tell me how you feel about the gold standard. Tangent part 2, everyone.
That's another time. On the other hand, we had the more rural and agrarian factions of the Democrats. They opposed the rich getting richer, wanted to implement silver into the economy to help get out of the 1893 economic depression called the Panic of 1893, which I didn't know existed.
Same.
I thought it was just the big one, the Great Depression.
The big one.
But we had one just not too long, shortly before that, called the Panic of 1893. This faction of Democrats also wanted the system to work for the everyday man.
Sure.
If you're looking for more information about this specifically, do some research on William Jennings Bryan, specifically his Cross of Gold speech, which made him famous.
I was going to say, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was so prominent and became so well known because of this speech. They actually kind of pushed him to run for president, and he was the youngest presidential candidate at the young age of 36.
Wow.
Which I believe is, I think you have to be at least 35 to run for president, so.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I got 4 years.
To make a name for yourself?
I think we can make it happen. Yeah. With social media today, anything's possible. Come on.
So the poor white farmers would congregate at rallies to show their support for the candidates that would ultimately help them, naturally. So the more agrarian workers of the Democrats, not Grover's Democrats. The group was often called the Wool Hat Boys, since they opposed the rich men wearing their expensive silk hats. They would wear their wool hats, not their fancy silk hats. A newspaper in Mississippi even published a notice for rednecks to rally at the polls at an upcoming primary election. It said, quote, "Primary on the 25th, and the rednecks will be there, and the yaller heels will be there also, and the hayseeds and gray dillers, they'll be there too, and the subordinates and subalterns will be there to rebuke their slanderers and traducers, and the men who pay 10, 20, 30, etc., percent on borrowed money will be on hand, and they'll remember it too."
Wow, what a rallying cry.
Yeah. So all of these workers and laborers are just kind of banding together to be like, we need a better situation for ourselves.
Totally.
And why aren't you doing it for us? Why aren't you doing it for us?
Hey.
So by 1910, these farmers and such supporters of the agrarian faction of the Democratic Party began to proudly identify as rednecks. No longer was it a term of a classist term. It was something that they were proud of. They were proud to be the laborers of this country, and they wound up wearing red neckerchiefs to rallies and other public events.
They're taking it back.
Taking
it back.
So these folks would stick together to support themselves and do their best to fight the ever-growing inequality between the working man and the rich man.
Yeah.
There's even the story of, you might have heard this one, I've heard it a few times. There's even the story of farmers buying each other's farms during auction for just a penny. And giving the land back to the original owner to keep the bank from profiting off of their misfortune during the Great Depression.
Yep. Which is incredible.
Amazing.
And would never happen today.
No. Walmart owns half the farms in the country anyway.
Which is bananas.
It's
disgusting.
Awful.
There's
so much
we could say about today. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's the story of the farmers. Now we're going to get into the West Virginia Mine Wars, or sometimes also called the West Virginia Coal Wars. So mine wars or coal wars, kind of interchangeable, because it wasn't just the coal miners; it was whoever was mining.
Got it.
Kind of involved. Now these took place between 1912 and 1921.
It's
Big
a
span.
long time, yeah.
And now, you talk to anyone in West Virginia, and they'll probably have some type of connection to the coal mines. It's huge in that state. Quick expansion of the mining industry throughout the state went hand in hand with the construction of company towns, where mining companies owned much of, if not all of, the houses, amenities, and public services. The workers who lived in these towns were often even paid in coal scrip, which was money, quote unquote, that could only be used at company-owned stores. So think of like arcade tickets at Chuck E. Cheese.
Right.
Bullshit.
Well, and then those stores usually upped the prices of the goods, and so then it was this really codependent cycle where people had gotten hooked on company towns because they didn't have money to move out of the
go
company.
Anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, was it Amazon or
it was Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon was like, I think that we could build. And everyone's like, not that long ago had we learned from this.
Yeah. Now, mining is a famously dangerous business.
Yes.
At the time between 1890 and 1912, West Virginia had the highest miner death rate in the country.
Oh my God.
Miner, M-I-N-E-R, not O-R. Just for clarifying.
Thank you for, that's where everyone was going.
Well, there could have been child miners.
That's actually true. There probably were.
Miners.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yikes. So it was so bad. More miners faced a higher death rate than if they went over and fought in World War I.
Jesus.
So,
Was it mainly just from mine collapses, or was it from disease? Do we know? Mix of both.
Mix of everything.
Sure.
Breathing into the dust. Not just healthy conditions. I mean, you're already in the mine, but you're dirty and there's not a lot to clean yourself with. Mine collapsing and whatnot. All sorts of stuff.
Sure.
Making it terribly unsafe.
Yeah.
But in a classic move, but fairly new in the day, to improve conditions, the mine workers decided to unionize.
Union.
Many of the workers had already begun to join the United Mine Workers in response to the reduced wages from the Panic of 1893, but it was not getting enough traction or even really being recognized by the coal companies.
Sure.
And there was a very famous woman of the American labor movement. She went by Mary Mother Jones Harris Jones. And she helped the miners of West Virginia organize. Mary became an organizer for the Knights of Labor and the United Mine Workers Union shortly after 1871.
Are the Knights of Labor still around? That sounds really familiar. Or do I just know it from historical context?
I think they're still... Let me look.
Yeah.
So a quick Google about the Knights of Labor. There's a lot of past tense verbiage going on. And one section on their Wikipedia page is decline. So
we're going to go with the no on that one.
No.
Yeah.
But I think they might have sounded familiar because they're just so famous.
Sure.
Or maybe infamous. I haven't really done a lot of research on them.
That's fair.
So Mary Jones became an organizer for the Knights of Labor, United Mines Workers Union, shortly after 1871. Mm-hmm. Her husband and 4 children died of yellow fever in 1867.
Oh my God.
Her dress shop burned in the Great Chicago Fire in 1871.
Jesus.
So she said, you know what? Change my life path. I'm going to go fight for labor rights.
Sure.
Right.
Incredible.
So she was once called, quote, the most dangerous woman in America, end quote, for her efforts in the labor movement.
Wow.
I highly recommend looking her up. She's really cool, and I'll probably do an episode on her later.
Hell yeah.
So there's that. With the help of Mary, the workers organized to demand better pay, safer working conditions, getting actual money as payment, so they could so they could shop and trade wherever, as well as the recognition of the UMW itself. Now, of course, the mining companies were none too happy about even the possibility of unionizing.
Of course.
So they refused to meet the demands of the union, and the workers naturally began to strike.
Right.
As you should.
Strike. I'm going on strike.
For the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just silent the rest of this episode.
I will be here, but I will not speak.
Devin's kicking me under the table. That is union busting.
Yeah. I just loop in old clips of you.
Miming. Yeah. It's really bad AI. Yeah, I'm moving my lips.
The coal companies even hired a private detective agency, the Baldwin Felts, to guard the mines, and they also hired some strike breakers as well.
Okay.
The agents from the detective agency were, of course, equipped with rifles.
Of course.
Okay. So the miners were actually forced to move out of the company houses because of their involvement in these strikes, and they wound up living in what is called a coal camp that was provided by the union.
Okay.
Now, somewhere around 35,000 people wound up living in these camps.
35,000 people?
Correct.
Jesus.
The miners and their families weren't allowed to use any company property while they were living not on company property.
Sure.
This included bridges, roads, and even things like running water.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's insane. Also,
Ridiculous.
how do you own running water?
Like faucets and whatnot. You just shut it off.
Sure. Okay.
Or don't give them access to those buildings.
Got it. Okay, that's fair.
Plumbing.
I guess in my head I'm like, do they have faucets if they're in camps?
No, they weren't able to go into town to use those
things.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So to show solidarity, the union members wore red bandanas around their neck to show that they were a proud union man, and they were then referred to as rednecks.
Love it.
Now, I did call this the mine wars or the coal wars earlier, and I'd love to tell you why, just very briefly, because there's a lot that goes on. As the strike went on, some Socialist Party activists began to supply the miners with weapons to combat the Baldwin Felts agency. Word got out that the workers intended to kill the guards and destroy the company operations. So on September 2nd, 1912, the governor of West Virginia declared martial law and seized all of the miners' weapons.
Oh my God.
It's just a short list of about 1,872 rifles, 556 pistols, 6 machine guns, 100,000 rounds of ammunition, and 480 blackjacks. As well as, I'm not done yet, as well as large quantities of daggers, bayonets, and brass knuckles. Now I'm done.
Insane. What's a blackjack?
A blackjack is essentially like a bludgeoning tool.
Okay.
It's I don't know if it is like kind of a leather strap with a hard ball at the end to whack someone, or if it's more solid than a leather strap.
Got it.
But it's a bludgeoning device.
Okay. That's crazy.
Very much so.
But also for 35,000 people, not that much.
No.
But also insane that they're like hoarding all of this, like ready to go. You're right.
Just some munitions. It's
right.
fine.
A small militia has formed.
Yeah. So in one of the towns of West Virginia, the hired guards wound up actually killing several miners over the first few months of the strike. These guards, I believe it was still the Baldwin Felts agency that did this. They even built this low-key war machine that was an armored train equipped with machine guns that they called the Bull Moose Express. Now, if you have a weapon that you're going to name, I think it's a bit extreme to use that for strikes.
Correct. A war machine for strikes, yeah.
And they, of course, used this to fire on those camps that I mentioned earlier.
Jesus.
So.
And this was unprovoked? They were just like, this is a tactic to like get them to stop striking? Or this was because they heard that there was this plan?
I believe part of it might have been in response to the weapons collecting and the plan to kind of retaliate.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, the agency was so aggressive. They were already carrying rifles and using those against the miners that was like, we're just trying to, live.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But by 1913, a compromise was reached that was enforced by the West Virginia state soldiers that gave the miners a 9-hour workday, protection from backlash for union membership, and a few other demands. So, like, 9-hour workday is huge.
Yeah.
And, like, you have a lot to thank because of unions, folks.
I'm just saying.
Just saying.
Just throwing it out there. Yeah.
They died for a 9-hour workday. And now we have an 8-hour workday.
Yeah.
We have a 40-hour work week because of unions.
Unions have changed a lot in this country, especially during industrialism.
Now, I'm not too sure what happened between 1913 and 1920. I know there was a lot going on in the world itself, but specifically in regards to the relationship between the coal companies and the miners. But things didn't end there in 1913 with that compromise, because I said it goes until 1921. It was 1912 to 1921, these wars. So in 1920, we have two battles that took place in April and August.
Battles. It's just insane to say battles when it's a strike.
Right.
Yeah.
One led into the other. So the Battle of Matewan, Matewan, and the Battle of Blair Mountain, respectively. The first one being in April and then August. These were all-out battles that involved several thousand people on both sides.
Oh, my God.
So the things that happened in the Battle of Matewan led to the Battle of Blair Mountain, where people were so upset by what happened at Matewan that they rallied more, and 20,000 miners had come from all over and marched to Logan County, West Virginia, to fight against the coal companies.
Yeah.
And most of those 20,000 were armed. This Battle of Blair Mountain was so massive, it is considered, and I think it still might be, I have to double check, it is considered to be the largest insurrection since the Civil War. I have to double check about Jan 6, 2020.
I was like, unfortunately, we've had some recent incidences. Right, yeah.
I have to check those numbers. Right. Not too sure, but it is still considered one of the largest, I'll say, insurrections since the Civil War.
Wow.
And this was all because those greedy mine companies wouldn't give their workers fair labor rights.
Is it an insurrection, though? Like, are they fighting, like, the military? Or are they fighting the agencies that the company hired?
I believe... I didn't want to get too much into specifically this. I could have probably done a whole ass episode on this. But... I believe the state had some, like, state military there to be like, oh my God, there are 20,000 armed people I should probably do something.
Got it. Like a National Guard sort of situation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't think there was specifically a National Guard at that point.
Yeah.
So that's why I say state soldiers, but equivalent of National Guard.
Right.
Yeah. And it didn't, spoiler alert, it didn't go well for the miners. And many people died. Mm-hmm. And it actually was spun where people were like, oh, maybe we don't unionize and stuff like that. It was spun,
of course,
correctly.
Right. Because the winner writes history.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I would really encourage you all to look that up as well.
Absolutely.
Now, yes, in modern culture, the way of the redneck has certainly veered to describe someone who's bigoted, ultra-conservative, probably racist, poor, and other things.
Yeah.
But what's important for these folks to remember is that it isn't your culture like you like to claim, being that racist and bigoted and whatnot. You know?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
The redneck culture is taking that boot out of your mouth that you've been deep-throating since 2016 and stand up for your rights as a human and as a blue-collar worker. The system isn't built for you, and it's been constantly reconfigured to continue to do so. It's okay to be a redneck, as long as you're wearing that red neckerchief to stand up for your labor and human rights. Be pro-union. Be kind to your neighbor and their neighbor. Lift each other up instead of fighting to push all of us down so the rich can get richer. There is a TikTok user by the name of Pissed Off Bartender that I recently came across, and he is the epitome of a Southerner. He has a thick accent, long, full beard, couple crooked teeth, and he does a great job of calling out folks for being racist, explaining redneck stories and history and lore, and giving a different perspective on the bullshit that the far right is spewing.
Sure.
And one of my favorite parts about him is that he ends all of his videos with "Yeehaw, fuck the law." And I think that is just a great way to wrap this topic up. So if everyone could join me wherever you are.
Oh, God.
Yeehaw, fuck the law.
Is that your next tattoo?
And that's the tale of rednecks. You know, it's not everything that it is today. It's not what country music has made it turned out to be, the early 2000s country music. There's a lot more to what it means to be a redneck. It means to fight for your right as a laborer.
Definitely. No, I mean, I think it's cool to be able to tell the kind of backstory to some things that have been, of course, twisted through time of what those things meant.
Yeah.
And of course, we support labor workers and all of those things.
Unionize.
Union. What do you call it? I do think it's interesting because obviously, like you said, like the North has kind of taken this term and like adjusted it to kind of these ultra conservative, kind of uneducated people.
Yeah.
Which I think redneck just kind of, it's possible to sit, those two things can exist together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do agree with you that there's more to a redneck than just the colloquialism that is today.
Right,
yeah.
Right. Like, just because you're a redneck doesn't mean you have to be a racist asshole.
Right.
You shouldn't be.
Right. Like, I just saw, speaking of TikTok, I saw a TikTok of, it's like this backwoods barbecue spot. And it's all these, like, country folks, and this guy's like, what did you just say? And you're like, oh, like, very, and of course, like, the first clip you watch is, like, he's spelling out, like, N-I-G, and you're just like,
oh no,
like, what happens? And your immediate thing is because, you know, as a northerner, you're like, oh, country accent, like, you know what I mean, like all of these like stereotypes get thrown, and then he's actually defending these other people in the space that other like white customers were like, why are they here, like, are you associating with them, like, you approve of this? And he was like, what the fuck did you just say? And like went off on these people, and I was like, incredible, you know what I mean? Like, just because you're from the South or you're a redneck doesn't make you a racist. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's the other lesson here is that it's not every. There's a few good apples in the bunch.
Yes, I feel I know where you're going with that and trying to stay away from that. But absolutely, yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think we know that to be true. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't know. I hope that this episode conveys the right message that I was trying to say, and I'm not in any way defending bigotry.
No, I don't think people got that.
Okay, cool.
I definitely think you're trying to say, hey, a redneck is like, it shouldn't be what it is today. Let's remember where it came from and like be supportive of that.
Right.
Like not be supportive of the kind of elitism that we've turned redneck into.
Yes.
Yes. I got you.
Thank you. Yeah. As I start to sweat worrying about the reaction to this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. Well, before I say anything else, I'm going to end this episode. Yeehaw, fuck the law.
Incredible.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening if you made it all the way through. And if you haven't yet already, make sure to like, subscribe, follow us at WDYK_podcast. And we'll catch you on the next one, folks. Thanks, Nick, for listening and hanging out.
Thanks, Dev.
Okay, bye.
Bye.